Hi, Kim Duke.
Hey, Chris Duke.
Oh, yeah, that's how we start the show. Sorry.
That's okay. I caught on very quickly.
So I told you before we started recording that I had some bananas news.
He's pregnant.
Damn it.
Congrats.
Thank you. So at work today, my boss came over to my cubicle, and he was like, Did you do the voiceover for a commercial? And I was like, what? No.
For their commercial?
Yeah. And I was like, no, I didn't. He's like, you sure? I wouldn't. Yeah. It wasn't me. They hired somebody named Chris Duke to do the voiceover for our commercial.
That's what? That's
Yeah.
really funny.
And they didn't think once.
To ask the Chris Duke?
Yeah. Like that pops up and nobody went, oh shit, just like the guy that works here that we see all the time and did photos for us.
Yeah, what
and
the
has
hell?
recording equipment.
Yeah, did you tell him next time?
No, I was just like, so then I had to Google the guy.
Oh, what's he look like?
He's tan. He's in his 50s at least. And likes tools. So he does like voiceovers specifically for tools.
Okay.
Which, I feel like if you do voiceovers, you just...
Do voiceovers for
You
whatever.
do voiceovers for whatever. Speaking of whatever, we have a guest today.
Wait, do we have any other updates before we bring up the guest?
Oh, yeah, you got anything? Okay.
No, the last time we went to the dentist. I'm trying to remember our conversation with Clifton. We had our...
Yeah, we talked about how it's called hand... Oh, if you did listen to that episode, the technique is called hand over mouth.
Did you talk about that in the episode?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I went somewhere for a while in my head.
Hand over mouth was the technique that they would use for children who are being ornery.
Ornery. I love that
They're
word.
loud, wiggly. What you would do is you would put your hand over their mouth until they stopped kicking and screaming. What is now known as suffocation.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
I think that's just murder.
It's murder. They're murdering babies.
Today I was like, I'm going to actually do my hair and my makeup and try and dress like a normal person because I haven't done that for so long. And I walked out of the house and I started driving and I'm like, oh, I still have my Crocs on. So I got 75% there.
All right. So
Okay.
today's guest, we met at Bicycle Repair Camp back in, was that 03?
I mean, you probably don't want to know how young I was in 03.
Gosh, we're old.
Oh, no. Are you 24?
No. I'm 28 now, but
I like the...
I think I stopped cognizantly aging at like 26. So every birthday since then, I've kind of had to like think about it every time I answer.
That's like I hit 30 and I don't remember how old I am after that. Yeah.
So, Kim, this is the second author that we've had on
Yeah.
our podcast.
I saw that. Slightly different genres.
Slightly
Yes.
different genres.
Yes.
But books nonetheless. But I'm psyched. So we first spoke when Mackenzie was on.
Yes.
And when there was a hot debate
A very hot debate.
about the pronunciation
Of the last name
Yeah.
Levy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you listened to that episode.
I did.
But I threw Eugene saying his name
Yeah.
all up and down that episode.
You threw
Did you
me right
really?
under the bus, too.
That's really funny.
I was very adamantly wrong, which is kind of my brand, so that's okay.
So anyways, round of applause for Rachel Levy.
Levy. I don't even... Yeah, I've gotten to the point in my life where I don't correct people, like no matter what comes out of their mouth. Levi is actually a very common.
Oh, really?
Yep.
With a Y?
Yep. Yeah. Levi and Levy are probably always before Levy. No one ever jumps to Levy right away.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
It's because Eugene screwed it up.
Yep.
Dang it, Eugene.
Yep.
You know what? Out of sheer disrespect and spite, let's start calling him Eugene.
Eugene and Don.
Okay, so first of all, how do you and Mackenzie know each other?
So we actually met because she used to work at the place of employment, not to like be too personal, where I met my husband. And she started working there 6 months to a year after I left. And they worked in the same department together. And then we actually found out that we were neighbors. We lived in the same, not in the same apartment building, but in like a complex.
Wow.
And we could see each other, our apartments across the like parking spot from each other. So it was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, she seems really cool. And I can tell she's really cool because she fights with my husband all the time. And so like I like looked at her Tumblr and was like, oh yeah, she's into like all the same shit that I'm into. So I would just like reached out. And at the time I was just pregnant. We hadn't had the kid yet. So I would like still go out and hang out with all the people that worked there, because that was like our whole friend group. And so she would come out to basically our Cheers bar and just got to know her. And then she was in my wedding like a year later.
Oh, that's
so,
awesome.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So just kind of one of those fast track friendships.
Oh, awesome. That's super cool. So now let's dive into the history of one Rachel Levy. Now, I haven't made it through the whole book just yet, but from what I have gotten through, I'm nervous. I will say that. But the way that you, man, just the words that you use to describe certain things.
I just want to let you know that Chris doesn't read either. So the fact that he is actually reading your book is huge.
I
Great.
do
Like
not like reading.
he hates reading. I think while we've been together, you've read 2, maybe 3 books. We've been together for 14 years.
Dang.
Angels and Demons is one.
Yep.
And then I think you read 2 other Dan
Yeah.
Brown books.
Which
That's actually really funny because there's these like online quizzes where you paste your writing into them and they'll tell you like the algorithm will like look at it and analyze what writer you're most like. And every time I've done it, I get Dan Brown and I'm just like,
Wow.
Okay.
There you go. That's why you
It's
read
fine.
Yeah.
I get the hesitation because he does the same thing every book.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I get it. Like by the time I read the third one, I was like, okay, they're just different names.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing, guy. But yeah, the words that you use reminded me so much of like when I was younger. That's how I was. Like I was using words that other kids were not using. Like I got picked. I wrote a short story, and in like our district, I was one of 4 kids that got picked to go and present it at Oregon State.
Cool.
In front of all these college kids. It was pretty sweet. But so that made me
Like you used big words and stuff?
big words.
Like
yeah.
on Dawson's Creek when they used all the big words no one knew?
Yeah, what was those?
Did you ever watch Dawson's Creek? Oh. I did a lot.
Not only am I pretty young, I lived in Germany until I was 8. And so I missed out on a lot of that like sort of cultural stuff until we moved.
Were you in Hamburg?
No, I was born in Nuremberg, and then we lived. Actually, we didn't live. My parents are civilians that worked for the military. They were both teachers that worked for DODS, the Department of Defense Schools. So like, people in the military who bring their families with them overseas, and they live on base. Their kids will go to basically American schools. And so my parents were both elementary school teachers.
What year was that?
Well, I was born in 92. So my parents were both there in the 80s and 90s.
Dude, they might have taught a lady that's now a producer on the other show that we do, Dude Absolutely. She went to school on base.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah, if she ever went, in Grafenveer or Vilseck, because Vilseck's the high school that my sister went to.
I think it was Vilseck.
Probably.
Wow.
She might have gone to high school with my sister, depending on how old she is.
That is crazy.
It's basically anytime someone is like, oh yeah, my parents were stationed over in Germany in the 90s, they probably crossed paths at some point. It was pretty small world.
That's nanas.
What is it? The something degrees of Kevin Bacon?
7 degrees of
Oh yeah.
Kevin Bacon.
That's kind of what it is then, huh?
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay.
Is your dad Kevin Bacon?
No.
Oh, dang it. Okay, so
Fancy words, Oregon.
fancy words, Oregon. But that was to leap into, were you always like searching for descriptors growing up? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. I think I've always had the impulse to express how I personally see the world, not from like a necessarily like opinion or like a personal lived experience way, but in just the like I feel the impulse to recreate the world around me from my perspective, or how I visualize things, and so I've done that with words. I've done that with photography. There's a couple different ways that I've done that. But I think it was just I was always an incredibly avid reader, and in theater and all these sorts of my whole family is like a performing arts family.
oh, that's awesome.
So my mom definitely read me books that were too old to me, and for me, and I think that it just sort of gave me this just broader vocabulary that I worked with on a regular basis. And I don't think my parents ever really condescended to me and spoke to me in a way that was like childish either. So like
Okay.
one of the things that especially I think because I started speaking German and English at the same time. So I had basically 2 first languages. And so I think my brain really early on was like context clues, like context. So like I just picked up on vocabulary really quickly. And so I think it's one of those things where my brain just likes to find those words that, yeah. I mean, and Rivers is an interesting example because I think that book more than others that I've written has the word choices stand out because I was trying to recreate a medium I had only seen visually.
Okay.
So like psychological horror, like film is where that really thrives. And I have read some like Shirley Jackson comes to mind. She did The Lottery is the one that everybody has to read.
Okay.
The short story about there's like a small rural town where every year a name gets drawn and they basically stone that person to death.
Did they have a movie about that?
Yes.
I watched that movie.
There is a movie.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have to watch that in like 9th grade, I think is when I did. Yeah, we read it and then we watched the film. But I think that what I was trying to do was create that mood that normally music and sound effects and cinematography would do.
Yeah.
And I had to do it with words. And so that was a big challenge. I'd never had to write that way before.
That makes so much sense because like I said at the beginning, it makes me nervous. the way that you describe things, and the first thing that like gave me an inkling as to where it's going to go is after the baptism behind the church. I was like, oh, this is just like there's that thriller vibe to it, which is like done not as well as you're doing it in movies where like there's I try not to give stuff away, but like there's a promiscuous individual and that person is showcased and then they die horrifically, and like the movie is trying to figure out why, and there's all these dark secrets behind it, and blah, 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 blah. But it's always like, in movies, it's always done in a way where it's like, how can we show some boobies real quick and then scare the shit out of everybody? It's just never, you know what I'm saying, Kim Duke?
There's always boobs.
There's always ever
Gotta
since
get
I was
people
young,
to the theater. Show them boobs. That's what they do.
you show them tatas. Anyways, that's something that always turned me off about film is like tatas and blood. I don't like those things together. I'm not a fan. But God damn it, there's a word that you use. That was the other thing I was going to say. The words that you used, I was doing a British accent while I was reading it, and then it's not a UK story, right?
No, it's set in the Dakota Territory.
Okay, yeah, and so as soon as because it's when the sheriff comes in, I was like, oh, it's not a British guy at all.
You read in a British accent?
It's
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
just, it's probably, I get that a lot.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the book that this is not really any sort of thing, but the book that I get the most attention for, in the sense that it's like my biggest project, the one that I talked about when I called in very briefly, is set in Dark Ages England. And so like that's where I've spent a lot of my time creatively. But I think that there's just something in the in early American accents that sort of replicates that, because
Sure.
The formality of speaking, the word choices, the sentence structure mimics that. So I'm not really surprised by that at all. And I think that one of the reasons that Isaiah the Marshal is so different is because he's probably the only character in the whole thing that's sort of just like, what the fuck is going on? he's very casual, and he's not from the Midwest. So he has his speech pattern is just slightly different.
Yeah.
Well, he's from the Midwest, but his father wasn't, so he's got a little bit different. And that's all backstory that you don't really find out in the book, but it affected how I wrote the character.
Awesome. Okay. Sorry, I had to go off on that before I forgot about it. Now, back to the history part of it, because Kim has pointed out that I'm all over the place. So let's...
It's okay, and
He's
I
got
have
ADD.
I do. I do too. So this is just gonna be how this goes.
Okay.
I've gotten better at getting used to it. I just go with the flow now.
So at what point did were you writing short stories growing up, like before it was like homework?
Yeah. This was my first foray into short form. I started writing novels at age 9.
Whoa.
And it was very thinly veiled Lord of the Rings fan fiction, basically.
Okay.
So it was basically Lord of the Rings with all my own characters and a different world and slightly different plot. But for a 9-year-old, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. I again, my parents had a huge influence on this, because my mom read me Lord of the Rings the year before the first movie came out.
Okay.
So 2000. And she read all of them to me, and then I saw the first movie, and I was like, I can do this. I need to do this. I need to make my own stories and all that sort of stuff. And so basically from that point forward, I was just writing books. And I had never tried to write anything that was short before. It had always been novels. I was really upset with myself when I didn't beat Christopher Paolini, who wrote Aragon, to the youngest fantasy author podium.
Oh.
But now I'm really glad. I didn't beat him, because I'm so glad nothing is accessible that I wrote before the age of 24.
Do you think that one day you'll let those things out into the world?
Probably not. I mean, none of them ever finished.
Oh, okay.
They were they're all it's funny because a lot of the stuff that I wrote then has wormed its way back in tiny pieces into other stories.
Like characters and all that?
Yeah. So the again, going back to my other Arthur story, the main character of that story, I'd always had her. Even in elementary school, I had this character who just didn't have, I couldn't find the story that she was supposed to be in. And then, you know, basically like 15 years later, just sort of like stumbled into it.
Okay.
So, and like there's a specific line in that story that I remember writing in that like first like Lord of the Rings fan fiction book that like stuck with me through the whole thing. So there's like little pieces like that will make its way through. But there's nothing that I can like wholesale take from that point of my life writing wise. It's all pretty beginner.
God, what was that short series? Was it the Coen brothers released on Netflix?
The
You know what I'm
Ballad of
talking about?
Buster Scruggs.
Yeah. Have you thought about maybe going that route?
So
and then
I
you could take those and
Yeah, I have my own podcast.
What?
Yeah, it's a fiction podcast though. It's called Tales from the Ridge, and it's a space western, like vignette stories like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah, I only have 2 episodes. My husband narrates it because he's got a very Johnny Cash sort of style voice. So yeah, I do. I really, after writing this one, and then I had another project that I had to write a short story for, which actually became the first episode of that. But I was like, man, short form is really fun. Like I get to just like tell the story and get you invested enough in the characters, and then I can just be done. I don't have to like fiddle around with all of this, like, you know, foreshadowing and long like payoffs and stuff like that. I like both, but I think I have a lot more fun writing the short form stuff. I get less in my head about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, deadlines are so stressful in any medium. So when you have, I mean, I would imagine in those short form, you feel like the finish line is so much closer and you can get there and be proud of it at the same time.
Yeah. And I think as someone with attention deficit, being able to see the finish line as something like physical and like knowing like, oh yeah, I just have to get from here to here instead of like here to here to here to here is a lot easier for my brain to like get to that like reward center right away than having to wait for it.
Wow. Okay. So you are writing through school, doing all of these novels. Did you go, like, did you pick your school based on writing?
No. I had really lofty dreams of being either an opera singer or like in theater or film, and then chickened out after my senior year and went to Moorhead, MSUM, for theater. And basically, like orientation day, I still hadn't like officially made my major choice, and I just was like, I'm just gonna walk into all the theater stuff. I'm just gonna do that. I don't know. I'm just gonna do that. So I was a theater major for 2 years, and then I decided that I was gonna audition for Manhattan School of Music to do opera, and then so I was a music major for that like semester, and then made it to the live auditions in Manhattan, and then didn't make it past that, but like got through the audition and was like, oh, no, I didn't actually want to do this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then I took a year off. I was like, okay, if I can't move to New York to go to music school, I'm just going to move to Minneapolis. So I just moved to Minneapolis, lived with my best friend, my boyfriend at the time, and another friend, and didn't have a job, didn't know what I was doing, and then took that year off and then went to the U. Still didn't have a major. And then that spring, so my second semester at the U, I took a class called The Story of King Arthur with Professor Rebecca Krug, who is fabulous. She's the most amazing professor I've ever had. Like, she's won awards for just, she for a class that was for non-majors, because it was just one of those like fun English classes that people could take to fill their
Like an elective.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not something you hear often, fun English classes.
Yeah. No, but it was because she just makes it fun. And you would see people that like you would not expect to enjoy an English class be like really invested in it. And I got so obsessed with the stuff in that class that like at the end of the semester, I was like, okay, I think you convinced me to be an English major. And the first words out of her mouth were, oh no. So it was kind of after that point that I just bit the bullet and just did English. I had pushed back on it for a long time because I felt like if I went to school for it, I was going to end up hating it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think had I done like creative writing or something like that, I probably would have. But since I just did English and got to sort of like craft my major the way I wanted to, so like I studied a lot of old and middle English texts and stuff like that, like a lot of just really super nerdy, hyper specific stuff. I avoided that. And I think that actually informed my writing better than if I had done creative writing.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember. There was like a film director who basically was like, to be a good film director, you need to just like live, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing for writing. I think that your experiences and your knowledge and the things you consume and all of that are better for informing your writing than just trying to learn how to write. As long as you write, you are doing the best that you can as far as teaching yourself how to write, just like constantly.
Yeah.
And I think that honestly, actually, theater informed my writing a lot.
Yeah.
I've had a couple people who read my writing and they're like, oh, you can tell you were a theater major. As long as they were theater people. Like theater people read it and they'll be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can tell by the way you like move your characters around and stuff like that. Like that you think about blocking while you're writing and like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
See, something about you made me think either theater kid or Mormon. So,
What?
Those things cross over more than you would imagine.
they sure do.
Yeah.
Why? I guess trying.
Well, ex-Mormon, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, the tattoos give it away if nothing else.
Yeah.
Chris is an ex-Mormon.
I am a pastor's kid, sort of.
Okay.
My dad sort of had a midlife crisis after we moved to the States because he couldn't get a job as a teacher because he had too much experience.
Oh, wow.
And when I was about 16, he became officially ordained. But so am I talking about that side of my life is really weird because I was definitely not, like I have friends who are actually raised in like religious cults. So like to say I was like, raised in like a strict household doesn't feel correct because I wasn't, because I was allowed to explore and ask questions and stuff like that. But at the same time, I was so eager to please all the time that I sort of self-enforced this sort of religious stringency.
Yeah, it's that thing where you know that, and I can tell, like, you learn in that type of environment that if I ask a question that makes it seem like I want to be invested in this thing, that it's going to bring them joy. It's like the best example I can think of that like I did when I was 14, 15. I was at a deli in New York and there was a septic tank that was blocking a bunch of parking spots. I went in, saw the guy. He was wearing a jumper that matched the septic tank truck. And I went up to him and I was like, hey, is that your truck outside? He was like, yeah. Obviously thinking that I was going to say some poop joke. And I was like, how do you know when your septic tank is at like a danger level? Because my parents, and so like you learn like ways to ask questions where somebody goes, that's oddly specific question to be. So, I mean, did you find yourself doing that at all growing up?
Yeah. And I think both my parents being teachers definitely, and both being artsy people, the paradox of my childhood is super strange, and I think that some of that leaks into Rivers as well, of the pressure that religion puts on you. And I shouldn't say religion, because I should say Christianity specifically.
Yes.
And that's kind of that's really what creates that horror in the story. And so I think that I was not put under a rock, so I could see how other people lived and how other people experienced life and whatever. And I could see the other side, that where people swung, wholly to sort of the like evangelical side as well. And here my family is sort of like exhibiting itself in this weird nebulous middle ground.
Yeah.
And I think that I just learned to adapt to both, and I wasn't quite sure for a long time which one I really belonged to.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think being able to, I was always kind of a mediator.
Oh, interesting.
So it's always been really easy for me to see where people are coming from. And so I think that's its own form of asking questions as well. They're just internal questions. Like, you're asking questions of the people around you, but you're not actually asking them out loud.
Yeah.
You're sort of like internally monitoring everything at all times.
That's interesting. When you say mediator, though, wait, you said mediator,
Yeah.
not monitor, right?
Mediator. Yeah.
Were you a monitor maid? Meter maid. That's what I was looking for. My brain went in 5 different places at once. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one older sister.
One older sister. Okay. So, and obviously legally obese if this is not. Like, were there points of contention where you felt obligated to insert yourself because you were able to exhibit those traits?
Yeah.
Okay.
So my sister is my half sister, and there is a lot of trauma around my mom's first marriage. And it has affected them both deeply in their relationship to this day. And as a kid, I was constantly trying to put myself between them in a way to like fix the situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is like, I've only done some therapy as an adult, but that's probably like my number one issue, is like a savior complex, sort of like trying to make sure that everyone is happy at all times, so that it doesn't escalate into situations where people are upset. And which was not my job, especially as like a child.
Yeah.
And I think that also having attention deficit as a young girl, the difference in how that manifests also contributed to that. So I was holding myself to this standard of having to be the golden child. I was also the mediator between these two women who I loved a lot. And then I also was holding myself to this ridiculous standard of fighting my own brain, which I didn't realize I was doing.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, as you know, like hyperfixations and stuff like that, reading and writing and that sort of stuff was one of those places where I just excelled.
Okay.
And so I did really well in school, again, because of the sort of like the ability for my brain to contextualize things really well. And so that was another area where I was just constantly monitoring, again, like the observing. And I think that's one of the things that weirdly makes me a pretty good writer, is just I've always been that aware of what's happening around me.
That's interesting. The hyper focus stuff, yeah, and because how do I put this? Things that bring you joy, and then learning that there's a career path in that thing that brings you joy creates this really motivating like feeling and almost like a driving force to like, okay, obviously this is what I'm supposed to be doing because I feel so strongly about this thing. But then that disappointment of when you get to that point and then you're like, that's not actually where I want to put the work in. It turns out I just enjoy this thing.
Yeah, that was theater for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw other people, how hard other people were working to make it work. And I was like, I don't have that in me for this.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I can't, when like, I can't go to rehearsal when can barely get out of bed sick, you know, like I can't make those kind of sacrifices for this art. Like I will kill it in community theater, but there's no way that I am going to be able to do this as a career.
Especially when you see other people around you who are like, will do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're like, I like it a lot.
Yep.
But not that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think going back to what you were talking about, the reason that writing stuck out through all of this was writing was the one thing I went to of my own accord. So like I started piano and violin lessons when I was 4.
Oh, wow.
And I was doing ballet when I was 4. And, you know, my whole family did theater, so I was in theater. And all of these things I enjoyed doing, but they hadn't been instigated by me. And so writing was the one thing pretty much that I was good at and I started doing because I wanted to do it and because I like doing it. And I think that's really why it's been what I've centered my life around.
Well, I forget who said this, but there's things in life that really you just want to be backstage for, because like being on the opposite end of it, just comedy is like the best example I can think of for that. Like when you're in the green room and you know how to do what all of these guys are doing, even though you're not going on stage, there's this feeling of like, I could do it. I could go and do that thing, but this is so awesome. For these other artistic endeavors, like there's so much shit that you have to do to be able to get there that like by the time you get to really where you wanted to be was just backstage.
Yeah.
It's lost its allure, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that.
Awesome. What?
I have nothing.
Oh, I
I'm
thought
not
you
a
said
creative
something.
person at all. So I just,
But you have been able to be backstage a few times.
yeah.
Kim Duke, which Nicholas Sparks book is your favorite?
Such an asshole. You know what? Layla, my daughter, she said this. I love like teen comedies or teen romance. Like I just rewatch all the stupid Twilights. I don't know what it is. And my daughter had a birthday party with her little friends, and I heard her. They were talking about The Kissing Booth because it comes up on Netflix. It was when it came, the second one came out, and I had already read the book, and I'm like, oh, and Layla's like, my mom already watched The Kissing Booth.
So that came from Wattpad, which is where my story is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so did
Arthur
the
one.
After series. I read all those and that. No. Yeah. Books are way better. The movies are. Anyway, she goes, my mom likes watching movies where people like each other because my dad goes in his office and ignores my mom. So.
Well, my door is always open.
I didn't really read Nicholas Sparks, though.
You would read the book.
I read A Walk to Remember a lot.
But you would always read a book before the movie came out.
It's true.
I tend to do that as well.
Yeah. Because then I'm like, but then I don't like doing it because then I don't like the movie. I'm like, well. But then I get it. Like, I get why. There's just things
I'm
you
so
can't
obsessed
put.
with film, too, that, like, I view them so separately that, like, my rule is always, it's okay to leave stuff out of a book. It's okay to change stuff if it makes sense for the medium and you're not changing the intention of like the characters that have already been established or the plot that's already been established.
That's what I have a hard time with the after movies versus the books, is that they change so many of the characters where it's just like my mind, it doesn't like, it's like, okay, well, yeah. That's like, it's like the 50 Shades of Grey for teenagers is the after series. Just,
Oh my God.
I know. Which is based, like, the lady, she based the books off of Harry Styles. Like, the main character is supposed to be based off of Harry Styles. Like, his look.
Oh.
He's all tatted up and the bad boy.
He's a bad boy?
He is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not Harry Styles. I don't know about Harry Styles. I don't know.
That's what I was saying.
Okay, so that must be where a lot of people start their books.
Yeah, I mean, I've only been on there for about over a year. So like the success that I've had on there so quickly is pretty bizarre, especially because a lot of it is that type of book and I don't write that type of book.
Yeah.
So Wattpad started as sort of like a aggregate site for fiction that you can get for free, like classics and stuff like that, and fan fiction. And so that's a lot of it still is that sort of platform.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are a lot of young writers on there who just put their stuff up, you know, as they're writing it, like the stuff that I'm glad that has never seen the light of day.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic because I personally am really glad that despite the fact that I had access to the internet for most of my like middle school to high school, you know, the internet was already established as this like thing that, you know, I'm glad that I didn't really stumble into a writing community like that when I was that young, because I think that it would have not created good writing habits for me. Because I think what ends up happening is that you get really attached to the validation, the instant validation. And when you don't get it, you're discouraged from it. And I think to be a really successful writer, you need to have the impulse to write whether or not anybody's going to read it. And that can get really tainted if you are starting out because of the validation.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
absolutely.
that's social media. I mean, yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see, you know, kids who are that age right now and who are growing up in this sort of golden age of exposure, to see what kind of how that changes and how this new era of writers grows up and what their writing is like by the time they get to my age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you would call, or when Mackenzie had called you, I had joked that you were a bionicle woman. And because the medieval story that you did, what was it called again?
The Hawthorne Throne.
The Hawthorne Throne. And you called it an extremely gay adventure, or
Yeah, it's basically just like a super gay fantasy adventure.
So, what about that? Is it that when you travel back, because actually you don't have to travel back that far. Obviously, there's a lot of fun when you travel hundreds of years back, but that taboo aspect of things, do you find yourself trying to imagine, like, I can't imagine holding a secret back like that in those times where it could have literally been life or death?
So I think that actually the peril in this novella in Rivers for Margaret and Emma, for the two women who are in love with each other, is a lot higher than the peril of my characters in the Arthurian story. And I think that that's even correct from like a historical standpoint, because we have a tendency as modern readers to project onto the Dark Ages and the medieval era this like homophobia that we anticipate was there, when really it was, again, probably a lot safer for my characters in that book than for this frontier America story. Because really, like you look even at like Guild era Germany, there's like codified into law, like that, like basically you could have people who were homosexual who were accepted by the community, and you could have your person that was like your paramour, basically, as long as you were married and had kids. Like, as long as you like kept the community like alive by having children and having a sort of official marriage, you wouldn't get in trouble for being gay. Like, that wasn't the issue. And you look at a lot of medieval texts and stuff like that, and I think that because so much of it's changing now, because people are starting to look at these texts with different lenses, like through queer lenses and through feminist lenses and all that sort of stuff. Whereas before, you know, the people who were doing the research on these were like old straight men. Mm-hmm. And so it's like they projected their mores onto these texts. So like you'll see that too with like translations of Beowulf and stuff like that, where it's done by like a woman or somebody from like a non-Western culture. And it completely changes the connotation of some of the translations and stuff like that. Because when you're not projecting your personal lived experiences and beliefs onto the text in a way, it changes how you interact with it. And so I think that's a lot of how we view that era comes from misconceptions of that we think it was this sort of extremely hierarchical, misogynist landscape when really it wasn't.
That's really interesting.
And I think that my brain is like jumping all over the place right now. So I'm like trying to like focus.
I'm going to blurt out this thing before I forget. There's this town, because when you were talking about that, it reminded me of like transgender roots actually go back hundreds of years. There's this village that they found. God, I wish I could remember who did the article, but there were these women that took over these ranches and farms, and they dressed as men and basically became celibate. And
I think
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yeah, it's in. Is it in Romania? It's like it's Eastern Europe.
Yes,
I think
it's an Eastern European culture. But yeah, and nobody, like, they're the most respected people in those towns. And so when you said that, that's the first thing that popped in my head is like, that totally makes sense.
And I think because so much of our collective knowledge of medieval, and Hawthorne is actually, it's 589 AD, so it's pre-medieval.
Okay.
Like it's about 170 years after the Romans withdrew from Britain is when my story is set. So it's like, you know, I say Dark Ages because that's what most people like, that's where their head goes.
Yeah.
So much of our knowledge collectively, like pop culture knowledge of that, is determined by a medieval fantasy and film and stuff like that. That it's again, it's tainted the actual sort of like cultural roots of that. And I try to explore that a little bit too, in the sense that like we've gotten so afraid, especially keeping the like gay in it, of platonic affection between men. And that was actually like men would hold hands, men would kiss, all that sort of stuff in Western culture, probably up until like even through the Victorian era. Like it was probably like right after that where that started. Yeah. Like you see pictures of like groups of younger men, you know, like in their like cricket clubs and stuff like that, and they're like holding hands and they're like really affectionate with each other, or they'll be like sitting on each other like in ways that like you would not see American men doing now.
That's my gay best friend right there.
Yeah.
He's so gay.
That's one of the things I've been really careful of in writing that, because it's a duology, in that is showing that like so much more physical and verbal affection that wasn't inherently sexual is just as real as the actual, like, because I also have obviously queer relationships in the story as well. So yeah, that's one thing that I think that we project onto the past. I mean, I had one reader that was adamant that medieval people didn't practice medicine. So like there's that like any sort of medicine was considered like witchcraft, which is apparently a pretty common misconception based on, again, like medieval fantasy books and stuff like that. But again, like witchcraft hysteria didn't really take root in Europe until like, I think it's like the 16 or 1700s.
Yeah, I was going to say it was actually not that long ago.
Yeah. And so I was like, no, we have like medieval texts of like monks practicing medicine and stuff like that. Like people practiced herbology and didn't necessarily think it was just magic. Like, so there's a lot of people come to stories of that setting with a lot of different preconceived notions. There's a phrase for it called, I think it's called the Tiffany problem, where Tiffany was actually a really common medieval name. But if you put Tiffany in a medieval book, readers are going to be like, what? Like Tiffany? Yeah. And so that's kind of, like people want to believe that what they, saw in,
So do you have to put like an extra spin on Tiffany, like Tiffany? Tiffany, Romania.
Yeah. Or I have a couple like Elaine's and stuff like that but those are more references to other Arthur stories. But
okay.
Anyway.
I just love geeking out about this stuff.
And I don't often get to sit and just vomit about it. So like
that's why I was so excited. It's so fun. And then it got compounded by the freaking verbiage that you use in this story, which is called Riverdale.
I'm glad you're nervous reading it though. Like I kind of just want everybody to be nervous like the whole time.
Did you see, what was it called? It was a movie about Jack the Ripper, and Johnny Depp plays a detective who gets blitzed on opium and then solves crimes. No. You know what I'm talking about, Kim? So.
Did we watch it together?
Yeah. Remember, because we went on a Johnny Depp binge.
We did go on a Johnny Depp binge.
Happens to the best of us.
It might be just called The Ripper.
No, I gotta look it
or
up.
Jack.
Where's Mara when we need her?
Yeah, no shit, Mara. But the horror, like
From Hell.
Oh yeah, From Hell.
Okay, now that sounds right. 2001.
Yeah, it is.
Dang.
Fucking horrifying. But
in 1888 London, prostitutes living in London's poor and decrepit. I don't know. Yeah. East End are being butchered by a killer who has come to known as Jack the Ripper. I gotta click on the rest of it. Oh, it's really. I'm not gonna read all that.
I ate some really tasty Thai food once in that area of London.
I thought you were gonna say you ate some edibles before coming on the pod.
No,
they're kicking in. Oh my god!
Has drug-induced visions from smoking opium. Why do you have such good memory?
Oh no,
I don't remember watching that at all.
I was thinking Johnny Depp, but. In there, the terrifying thing is the perception of like class and civility is just, those are the most horrifying people.
Yeah.
Like the bigger the facade, like the more terrifying the catacombs of fucking horrific stuff that they've done. So like, it's the vibe that I'm getting in the beginning of this book is like, oh no. They know how to speak well, and they have righteousness on their side. They're all evil.
Yeah,
is what I thought of. Because like in that adaptation of like that version of Jack the Ripper is like the main character or the villain is this guy who like is incredibly well spoken, articulate.
Sure,
and,
like most serial killers,
and like thinks that he is doing like work on behalf of the society because these prostitutes are
yeah,
they're making us look terrible. My God. So that's
Yeah.
the vibes I'm getting. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah. No, I mean the antagonist of the story, if you want to put it that way, is a lot more conceptual than an actual person.
Okay.
It ends up being the most common thing I've had from readers is literally they'll be like, oh no, is Margaret a demon? Oh no, is Emma a demon? Oh no, is Joseph a demon? Like everyone is just like trying to figure out who is the person that's possessed, and it's not anything like that. So like it's just that's kind of the vibe of the whole thing is you don't actually know what where the evil is at any point, or if it exists at all.
Or are we all evil? Let us join hands in this goat's blood.
We're all possessed.
Oh, man. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but it's time for our favorite segment, Kim Duke. Do you know what that is? Okay. So go ahead and put those other two to the side and then crack that thing open. I think they're individually wrapped.
Yeah, it
They
looks
are.
like it.
I think for COVID we're gonna have to keep getting things individually wrapped.
I don't know if I'm going to be
Is
able to
there a
open this
tear
one.
spot?
There we go.
Okay.
Oh man.
Boom.
It's such
Grab
a
one.
weird-
Don't eat it yet.
The calorie count is so weird. It's 144. I've never seen it's usually per 4 pieces.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to grab one here.
Dummel? Dummel?
Dumle.
Dumle.
Taste.
I think this is from IKEA.
Oh, you know what? You have a Dummel, right? Okay, so crack it open, have a sniff.
It's good. It smells like chocolate.
Ooh. Yeah, digging the smell so far. Oh, you went right for it. Okay.
The lime is barely there.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's just an enjoyable chocolate.
It kind of tastes like if you were to get like some really ridiculous chocolate martini or something like that.
Okay,
That's what it's bringing to mind.
I
for
gotcha.
me.
It's like if you get a piece of chewy chocolate and then drink 7-Up with it.
Yeah. Oh, that wasn't as weird as I was wanting it to be. Weirdest candy I've ever had was fermented plum from Japan, because my best friend lived in Japan for a couple of years, and she sent it to me with no context. And so
Just
I was like,
try
oh, what's this? And it was so weird. Like, the experience was so beyond anything I'd ever had before that I made my husband eat one too, because I was like, you have to share this with me. You have to share this experience because I cannot describe it. And so I just need you to know what I just ate. And so I messaged her and I was like, what was this? And she was like, oh yeah, they're like salted fermented plums. They're super popular with old Japanese men. And I was like, thanks. Yeah. So if you want a really wild ride at some point, just get some of those.
That's really funny.
That is really funny.
I can't even describe it.
I like the idea of her thinking of old Japanese men and being like, you know, who would love this?
She couched it in other candy. Like, I love weird Kit Kat flavors. So like when she was over there, she would just send me weird Kit Kat flavors all the time. And so like it was hidden in that and some like candy that's like, oh, this is like the little rock candy she eats in Spirited Away and like that kind of stuff. And so I was
you're
like,
like,
what's this?
Weird.
Existential crisis.
I love it.
Yeah.
I tried ordering Korean, an assortment of Korean candies and treats from Amazon. And when I got it, the bag had a label on it that said Japanese candies. I was like, it's not what I wanted. But we did have a quite large array of odd things.
Very odd. Yeah.
The worst thing was that it was like jerky, but seaweed.
Like, don't even talk about it. It makes me want to throw
It's
up.
really horrible.
It was so bad. We had that not from that same package, but we tried barbecue crickets,
I've had crickets before.
which
Had
it wasn't
crickets in
bad. It was just
Mexico.
crunchy.
Yeah.
Our daughter even tried it. I was very surprised she tried it.
the jerky thing was so bad that one of the guests was like almost didn't believe how bad it was, so he took another bite. It's like, I don't know if
Oh, I couldn't even. Ugh, it was so gross.
like I would imagine it's like if you like fried fish. Okay, so you fry up some fish.
I love fried fish.
And the grease that collects in the little fry basket, if you were to peel that off and then eat that,
Yeah.
it's the only...
Okay, knock it off.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh, it's really... Ugh, it was so bad. And then we had one other thing that was so bad. I couldn't even eat it. The dried broccoli florets.
You literally couldn't eat it because they were so
Sure.
difficult to eat.
Yeah, they were so dry. Yeah. I've had dried cauliflower and it wasn't that bad, but those broccoli, they were pretty bad.
I don't think I've ever had dried vegetables. Dried fruit for sure.
Yeah.
Dried vegetables,
carrots.
Not so great.
Like, well, they make like chips.
Oh, yeah.
Out of carrots and beets
Yeah.
and stuff. So I've had that, but that's cheating a little bit.
It is cheating. Shame on you for cheating.
No.
I'm not into
If I'm gonna
it.
eat vegetables, I'm just gonna eat vegetables.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna eat chips, I'm gonna eat chips.
Yeah.
I don't want
to mix them
two.
together. No.
Yeah.
Something that we glossed over that I've been meaning to ask, but I don't know how to ask. Maybe legally obese, maybe not.
Is it the Bionicle Woman?
It is the Bionicle
No,
Woman thing.
It's not legally obese.
Wait, what?
Legally obese was the safe word.
If I didn't want to talk about something.
Oh. I was so confused earlier when you said that. I was like, why are you calling yourself legally obese again?
Well, I mean, I am,
He's
but
not.
I have a label. It's thick with 2 C's. Okay. So, growing up, did you, were you able to discern attractiveness towards, boy, girl, or was it all the same?
So for a long time, I just was like, I just assumed I was straight because I was super into boys in general. So I was like, clearly I'm not gay. So I'm all about this. And I think that, like a lot of bisexual people, my attraction to women felt different. And so I didn't really know how to categorize it. And I didn't categorize it as attraction. It really wasn't, and I didn't have any sort of reference point for bisexuality, really. I didn't know any bisexual people. I mean, I probably did. I didn't know any out bisexual people. And there aren't that many in still, even in popular culture.
Right.
And so it really wasn't until college when I was obsessed with House and 13 was on there. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. You can be attracted to men and women. Whoa. Then was still a couple of years before I really sort of accepted that oh yeah, I'm bi. And I was like, when I moved to Minneapolis, I kind of just because I didn't really know anyone who lived here and I didn't have a job and I didn't have any reason to be here other than I just was done living in not a city, that I was like, I'm just going to live this now. So I didn't really have a coming out moment or anything like that. It was kind of just people who I basically just formed a new life and just tried it on and found that the shoe fit. And so,
Okay.
I mean, bisexual people in general just have constant imposter syndrome.
Oh, interesting.
So it'll be people will be like, oh, man, I've dated women, but I still don't know if I'm gay, if I'm bi. And I'm like, you are. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, it's just one of those things where, straight people want you to be straight and gay people want you to be completely gay. So you are constantly getting messages from both sides, and because I so firmly don't give a shit what anybody else thinks of my experience or my identity, I just fell into bisexuality really easily. And I should also clarify that like bisexual is same and other, like old school definition of bi.
Oh, okay.
Like what a lot of people call pan is probably closer to my
that's
experience.
what I was thinking.
But because I respect the history of bisexual people in the movement and the understanding that for most bisexual people, gender actually isn't the definite.
Right.
It doesn't define it. It's just how that is most easily explained to generally non-queer people. And it had such a strong, again, history in the queer movement. And I just really liked the bi community. So that's why I decided to label myself that way.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
There's this comedian that I have recently started listening to a bunch of his stuff. He's a wild guy, but he he has this saying where when he describes his sexuality, he said, I fall in love with men, but I have sex with women. That's such a awesome way of saying that.
That's kind of how it felt for a while too for me, where I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely sexually attracted to women, but I don't know if I could be in a romantic relationship with one. But that's not true. And I think again that is something that each individual person experiences differently in bisexuality, because some people definitely sway one way more than the other. I'm pretty firmly in the middle. And again, the way I saw someone describe it one time is when I see someone who's a guy that I'm attracted to, it's like, ooh. And when I see a girl I'm attracted to, it's like, ah. And that's the best sort of abstract way I can describe it, is it's a completely different sensation, completely different sort of headspace, emotional space. And I think honestly, the way I experienced it when I was younger had way more to do with being, I'm sort of, I kind of call myself loosely non-binary.
Okay.
I recently sort of fell onto the label demi-woman. So demi-gender is sort of where you...
a god. Is that
Yes. For me, it's, I am so clearly femme that I exist in the world as a woman, right? Other people perceive me as a woman.
Okay.
And my lived experiences as a woman. And I feel connected to womanhood through being a mother and through a myriad of other experiences. But really, on a personal level, I feel more non-binary. But I never swing completely. The reason why gender fluid didn't make sense for me is because I never swing so far that I'm oh yeah, I feel like a man today.
Sure.
So I'm woman light.
Okay.
And so I think, and that's also very common for bisexual people to feel that because gender is so meaningless to us when it comes to attraction and sexuality, that our own perception of our own gender also gets sort of wavy and the lines start to blur. Yeah. And so that I experienced much more as a kid, of the sort of when I would have a crush on a girl and didn't realize it, I described it to myself as feeling manly. Oh. When really it was more of just being attracted to a girl or perceiving myself in relationship to a girl. I didn't quite feel like I fit in that box.
Yeah.
So that I would say was what dominated that age more than bisexuality, because I clearly had crushes on boys. So that wasn't so much of the issue.
It's interesting. I think it's weird that as a society we can go, hey, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Now, I'm going to go chug a 12-pack of orange soda that tastes nothing like oranges. This whole, let me backtrack. I wanted to say, do you know who Lynn Gunn is?
No.
So she's the lead singer of Paris. Awesome band. Highly recommend. But she came out as queer, and there was a lot of like groaning because people were like, who fucking cares? Aren't we supposed to be at a place where we don't care? And her point was, having that stance, you're choosing to ignore that there is still a massive struggle for people. There is still an awkwardness in conversation. Mm-hmm. Like the fact that like the slight awkwardness that I felt in even bringing it up is because it's not on a full scale acceptance level. And I don't think any, race is always going to be a thing. Like there's all of these things that will always have some level of plight to it. But the reason why I think, like, I agree with her in the sense that, like, you have to keep saying it if you actually want it to be normal. That's where I was trying to go. Yeah. And so, like, the way that your characters are being written in these books, I said, like, it's perceived as, like, taboo back in the day or whatever. But the normalcy of the protagonist, like, not having to be a straight character or not having to be a gay character. Like, it doesn't have to be one thing. It can be all over the place. That still needs to keep happening and be talked about and be perceived as digestible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really funny because I didn't ever foresee myself as being someone who centered my writing so clearly around queer characters, but that's really what it's evolved into. Like, not one of my stories right now that I have that's finished doesn't involve a character who's not queer in some way. And I think that one of the things that I lean toward is writing stories that have queer characters in them, not stories that are about being queer. And that's my personal choice. It's like how recently there was all of this stuff with the publishing industry where they were like, oh, we're going to center Black authors more and we're going to center Black stories and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, but you have to let Black authors write whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
You can't just take the stories that are about, oppression or about, what you define as a Black book. You have to take, the stories that are fantasies that are written by Black authors that don't have anything to do with oppression in America. Like that, that is always the like second wave of push when it comes to telling stories, is being able to tell stories that aren't about that experience, but still include these characters. Yeah. So I would say that Rivers is probably the only one that sort of directly grapples with homophobia directly.
Oh.
Yeah. And it still doesn't even do it directly. It's still sort of indirect.
Okay. Religiously, was there ever any conflict or trepidation in revealing that to your parents, that side of you?
I still haven't officially come out to my father. Like, I've never sat down and had that conversation with him. I have with my sister and my mom. And I think because I came out so late, it was much less of a thing. And because I'm, now, like, I'm married to a man and I have a kid. It's one of those things where, like, people can contextualize your bisexuality as something that they don't actually have to ever address. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, oh, no, you're living a straight life, even though my marriage is super gay in its own way. So, like, it's fine. But, like, it's one of those things where you can never tell if people are accepting it or they're just choosing to ignore it. But I don't, again, I think my experience is unique in the sense that I came to it so freely of my own accord and in such a way that, like, I didn't feel And I didn't feel like I was hiding that aspect of myself because I didn't understand that aspect of myself.
Oh.
You know, like I didn't feel like I was hiding something because I didn't really even understand it. And I think that that's one thing that I would say is easier for me in my journey of being queer is that like I wasn't kicked out of my house. I wasn't,
Sure.
like I've only had a couple of instances where I was ever like, visibly out with a girl and had a even mild confrontation.
Could you pull that guy a little closer to you?
So, it's sort of more in the like meta sense of just existing in the world as a queer person and that I experience. Yeah.
Well, that's why I thought of Lynn Gunn is because when people say why does it matter? What's the sense in you're married, you have a kid, what's the sense in even doing it now? Examples like you showing people that, hey, being bi does not have to be shoved into that stereotypical box of like promiscuous and partying all the time. Like there are completely normal, quote unquote, normal people who can still be bi or be queer or whatever. Like the more examples of like happy people, that's what I'm looking for. More examples of just happy people and being content, also being willing to come out and say these things is super important and makes people feel less scared or that they have to live up to this stereotype that especially in America, people push real hard.
Yeah.
He's crazy. I like your boots, though.
Thanks. They're scary.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I wasn't taking up too much of your time because this is a lot of fun. I like this a lot.
The debates have started.
The debates have started. I don't want to talk politics, though. I'm over that shit.
I know. I feel like I gotta watch it though because I'm gonna see so much stuff on Facebook tomorrow.
Every episode since we relaunched Duck Duck Radio has had, with the exception of Mackenzie, has had this improv adjacent thing. I don't know if you followed any of the other episodes, but I like set up a scene and then the improv is the dialogue. Everything else is manufactured. So it's technically not improv. I don't know if you'd be up for such a scene or not.
Sure.
You down?
Yeah.
Okay. You're a florist?
Sure.
Is that what they're called or is it a botanist?
Florist.
Yeah,
well, do I
absolutely.
put bouquets together?
Yeah.
I'm florist.
Okay. What's a botanist?
They study plants.
Yeah.
Oh, study plants. There we go. So you're a phlebotomist.
That's different.
Yeah,
that's taking blood.
Yeah, that's a blood draw person.
Oh, that's an actual word?
Yeah, phlebotomy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just merging.
Phlebotomists.
Or the people that
Yeah,
draw your blood.
I was just mixing two words together. Look at that.
That's how English works.
That is how English works. Okay, so you're a florist, and I need flowers. But you're also have like really bad allergies, so you're trying to get me out of there as quickly as possible. So, hi, are you a phlebotomist?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll go get my blood drawn someplace else. But before I do that, I need some flowers.
What kind of flowers?
Are you, did somebody hurt you?
No, do I sound weird? This is my normal voice.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is also my normal voice. My grandma and her best friend are celebrating 40 years of owning a bike repair shop together, and I wanted to get them some flowers to commemorate. Do you have any suggestions?
What, do you have a price range?
Anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000.
Oh. Okay, well, I have this prearranged thing over here. You can take a look at. It's got some lilies on it and some greenery and a little tiny bear that says congrats.
Oh,
Does that sound like something that would work for you?
well, my grandma, her husband was my granddad was mauled by a bear, so I don't think.
Okay. Do they have a favorite color? Is there like, does their shop have any designs that I could emulate in the
There's a lot of horns and bells. They mostly fix horns and bells on people's bikes.
Okay. Okay. Well, I have this this clown one over here. I guess I could take his like little horn and I could put that on.
Yeah.
Do you want
Do you have-
tulip? Can I string it on a tulip for you?
Do you have 20 more horns that you could take off of clowns?
No,
Oh, just the one horn?
just the one.
Well, maybe something else then. Do you have any flowers that are shaped like horns?
Yeah, I mean, most flowers are shaped like, they have bells, trumpets. How about these irises? They're lovely. They're in a pot. They could plant them outside the shop.
Well, they also love Goo Goo Dolls, so that's a great. It's a great upsell. I like it. Okay. Well, do you accept Bitcoin?
No.
Oh, okay. I have a bunch of pennies in my trunk. Is that okay?
Yes.
And then I go out to get the pennies, and you lock the door behind me, and I don't get my flowers. That was awesome.
I've actually had somebody who came through my express line one time at my old job where I met my husband and where Mackenzie worked, who paid for their express lane. So, 10 items or less, trying to get people bumped out of there, paid for the entire transaction in $1 coins.
Oh, what?
And then had to open up all of these new packages of $1 coins and take out all the Susan B. Anthony coins because they needed those to send to their grandchildren. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an odd.
Yeah, you could do a whole episode of just me and Mackenzie and my husband talking about this place because it's weird.
That is
Lots of weird.
Insane. Wait, so was this a grocery store?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is Legally Obese the grocery store?
I mean, no. I just don't want to, my husband still works there.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So I don't want to throw him under the bus.
Gotcha. Then it shall remain
legally obese.
legally obese. Oh my God. Okay. Well, this has been so much freaking fun. Thank you again so much for coming on and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Before I kick you out, where can people find you?
Sure. So specifically for Rivers, since that's what I came here to talk about, and we've talked very little about it, which is very...
No way, we talked a bunch about it. Right? We talked about you and the queerness.
For on my website, so just Relevy, RELEVY author.com. If you go to stories and then click books, it has all of my books that are available. And Rivers is in pre-order right now, so you can pre-order physical copies. I just have a Google form for people to fill out because I can't order physical copies until it's I can order them personally, but people can't order them until it's launched.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm ordering the copies and then signing them and sending them out to people.
Oh, wow.
And then ebook copies you can already pre-order through pretty much every ebook retailer. I'm still waiting on Amazon because it takes a long time to get approved through there. But if you go to my website, it'll have buy the ebook, buy a physical copy. And then literally all social media, it's always R.E. Levy or R.E. Levy author. If you search that, it'll come up.
Oh, awesome. Okay, that was all the socials.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just River? I thought it was Rivers of Eden.
Rivers of Eden. I just call it Rivers in my head because that's what people
I just
do.
want to make sure listeners, book enthusiasts.
Do you want to
Yeah.
give a little brief of what
Sure.
because we talked a little around
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Wow.
I'm so used to
Okay.
the product being out that I'm bad at the hype because I was excited about it already. Please.
Sure. So Rivers of Eden is a mouthful, a Midwest Gothic horror novella. So it's about two women who have been best friends their whole lives, and they've been in love with each other this whole time, who, when they're 17, they might accidentally have released some sort of evil entity into the world with this sort of benign childhood, like Bloody Mary type of ritual. And it was the same night that they first kissed. And then it like fast forwards 5 years, and Margaret is married and has a baby, and Emma is kind of the town floozy. And stuff just starts happening in the town, and they both feel like it has something to do with that night. It's only 10 chapters, about 22,000 words. Quick read. People tend to zip through it.
Unless you're a slow reader like myself.
Hey, but I'm apparently supposed to be overjoyed that you're reading it at all.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, okay. So if you heard me talking at the beginning of this episode, what I was talking about and alluding to was this book that Rachel is now talking about. It is so, just in the first 3 chapters, the verbiage, you just articulate things perfectly. I can feel the humidity. I can feel the...
It's been called atmospheric.
Yes, it's very atmospheric. There was a word, I wish I could remember what it was, but I went, oh, what a good use of that word, like to myself mentally. I was like, we can all hear you, buddy. But yeah, it's very gripping. And like Kim said, I don't read books very often. It's been quite a long time.
My husband doesn't read fiction either. He's never read anything that I've written. Except for the podcast that he narrates. It's the only way I can get him to read it.
Yeah, and so I'm excited to finish this thing. It's freaking awesome. Kim Duke, any words? Okay. Well,
I think you have all the words.
I did have a lot of words. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
So the last thing that we do on the show is our listeners are called ducklings. So we say, au revoir, little ducklings, quack, quack.
Au revoir, little ducklings, quack, quack.
Aw, au revoir, little ducklings.
Good job. That was awesome. Now I feel bad. I didn't even think about that. I was like, I was assuming that people listening had already, I went on the assumption route.
That's okay.